Enzo, something that me and Disco discuss quite often on the show, and I wanted to hear your take on this. Why does it seem, doesn't seem, it's a fact that, they don't really develop characters like they used to. They don't really bring people in with vignettes like they used to. They don't, like, for example, if you didn't know Ricochet was probably the best high flyer since Rey Mysterio, the way they presented him, the way they brought him in with Aleister Black, which was a team out of nowhere, really had no chemistry. Even when they gave the hot tag, they were giving the hot tag to the wrong guy. You want to give the hot tag to Ricochet. They've kind of dropped the ball on somebody like him and so many others. What is going on over there that almost seems like they've lost their way a little bit?
I think it's really hard to take matters into your own hands if you're one of the boys, bro. You got to fight tooth and nail, and they're not going to let you, man. If you ever watched that interview where Vince was with Stone Cold, and he's like, I'm not going to let anybody grab the brass ring. Vince, you have to remember, is so intelligent. He's a billionaire for a reason, and he wouldn't say that if he didn't thoroughly believe it. I just think that there's a lot of chefs in the kitchen. There's a whole lot of writers, and week to week, a lot of the talent have no idea what they're getting themselves into until they show up to the show. So many times I was handed a script, and that script would change an hour before the show, and I'd be trying to remix it, as I would call it with the writers, hit it with the remix. And some of those writers hated that when Enzo goes out there and he goes off script and he comes back through the curtain. He's like, I forgot the fucking script.
And you caught a lot of heat doing that too, though.
Let me ask you a question. Who gets upset about that? Like who? Like
the writers? Did he just say?
These writers. Let me ask.
What that matters is Vince. So I never gave a fuck about getting heat with writers. So if a writer had some terrible script or wrote some shit that I wasn't feeling, I'm sorry, bro. I didn't ask for permission. I asked for forgiveness. And half the time I didn't even ask for forgiveness. I just went out there and said what I felt was better, because who better than the guy that's going, my name is Enzo Amore, and I am. And I wrote that, and I'm hearing them all say it with me. If you don't have to hold this microphone and stand in front of 1 million people every week, if you've never fallen on your back, got your teeth kicked in, or taken a fucking bump, or nearly risked your life, had your mother crying at home because you were knocked out cold in a fucking MRI, and you came to, you've gotten your leg broke in the ring. I went through the ringer to hold this microphone, to hear those people say that shit. So if I'm not feeling it, I ain't fucking saying it. And that's just the way I just cut that promo is how I oftentimes spoke. And people don't want to hear that.
Well, that's my question is like, there's got to be a real disconnect there between the writers and the talent, because the writers are constantly writing these shitty promos for these guys.
Well, some of these
they're not getting over, and they're like who?
There's some writers that I still talk to that I enjoyed hanging out with more than I enjoyed hanging out with some of the wrestlers.
So what percentage of the writers there do you think are like these guys should be writing more stuff, and some of the what percentage of the writers there just should not even be there?
Well, here's the thing, right? Also, I mean, I would love to get back to a day and age where there's 3 or 4 writers at a pool hearing all these stories of old and going back to the vignettes and debuting guys. Like you hear JR, I remember educating myself so importantly in the business when I broke in was listening to old podcasts. And I would listen to JR, Stone Cold, Jim Cornette, Bruce Pritchard, and I would listen to people talk about the business so that I could learn and educate myself. And, hearing about these vignettes and the way they brought in Kamala back in the day, and how fucking throwback it was in somebody's backyard, and the guy, what was his name? Big Baby something or other, Sugar Bear or some shit. How they fucking, and Lawler and the territories out that back, and Crockett when he got the planes and talking to guys like the Rock and Roll Express often hearing from, Robert Gibson and Ricky Morton, who me and Cass sat down and had dinner with in New York recently, about these old territories and these wars. Some of the best promos ever cut about building opponents and shit, about, NWA era, Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, Four Horsemen, and, all that era of wrestling that I didn't know about, that I re-educated myself about.
Those guys were great talkers.
They talked about opponents, and they built up, look at the Weaver Lock promo by Dusty Rhodes. The shit he sold going into that about Barry Windham, and he sold the move, if I get you in this move.
But all those guys back then, like Ole Anderson, Roddy Piper, Disco, give me some other good promos from back then.
Oh, Macho Man.
Terry Funk.
Funk. Terry Funk. Dick Murdoch was a great promo.
Murdoch.
Cornette was one of the
Right.
there were so many great like Hall of Fame talkers.
Yeah.
This is the one thing that I find is like we always have Meltzer. We have Meltzer on this show every once in a while, but this is where I think pro wrestling.
Meltzer, man. He hasn't thrown out an accurate report about Ring of Honor invasion yet. Shout out Dave Meltzer.
Listen to this. It's like Meltzer's like pigeonholed into like we rate the matches, scale of 1 to 5, 5-star, and like that has become like the way that we judge a wrestler. My whole thing is like, why don't we rate everything that everybody does? Why don't we rate the promos? Why don't we rate the vignettes?
Wrestling to me is always about reaction. It has nothing to do with the moves. The best matches I've seen are the John Cena matches for the past 5 to 10 years that I've watched. I mean, he's getting the best reactions. Unless you're in the ring, in the arena, hearing him call a spot from the apron and why he's calling that spot because you're listening to the crowd and how they're reacting, the guy has a recipe. You can hate it. You can't see me, swing, duck, fucking pick a guy up, all that bullshit. That recipe works. Yeah. Is it for everybody? No. I mean, you could sit down and go through. I mean, look at the shit y'all were doing, and especially that cruiserweight division and all that Rey Mysterio, fucking Juventud, Chris Jericho, the spots, and there was just a difference in the artwork. To me, WWE is World Wrestling Entertainment, and the reactions are king. And whoever gets the best reactions has the best match.
That's the way it should be, and then that's why the top guys have always been top guys. Like regardless, like there's been like this groundswell of like the internet darlings that like think these guys don't know how to work and they don't do enough. But like, bro, if you don't have to.
No,
that's
man.
That's my thing. I want to ask when you're down at the performance center, okay, who there is teaching you guys?
Dusty had him.
How to be stars.
Well,
Dusty Rhodes was holding Enzo down.
I am the absolute fucking anomaly, so to say, in wrestling because I came in off a YouTube video and fucking got thrown into the fire because that's what I said about politics. I didn't politic because I can never explain to people what it's like to be Enzo. The first time I was ever on TV, John Cena's backstage, asked me to go into the dark segment with him. Damian Sandow's the intellectual savior of the masses. So I just by chance say, I'm a certified G and a bona fide stud, and you can't teach that. And Big Cass is 7 foot tall, and you can't teach that. And Damian Sandow, you're a smart guy. You know how many dimples are in a golf ball? There's exactly 136 dimples in a golf ball. And there's 0 dimples on my hind end. You want to know why, Sandow? Because I'm hard body. And you know what you are? You're SAWFT. Sure. The next fucking week, dude,
that place must have popped.
We're not on. John Cena says, "Sup." The whole crowd repeats, "Sup." The first time I'm ever out there in a dark segment, I just debuted that day, and Big Cass had never even been on TV before. The next set of tapings were not booked. I'm supposed to be fired. Cass is in an ESPN show where they just say he's about to be fired in. And then the crowd.
I remember that show.
The whole taping, the crowd is going, "Sup, sup, sup, sup." So they come up to us in the dark segment. Ryback's supposed to cut a promo. He's the reason why the house is there because he's running hot with John Cena in a program. So I go out there and his gimmick is Feed Me More. They get asked to do a segment with Ryback in the dark segment with Cass, who the world is seeing for the second time ever together. And I have had 0 matches at this point under my belt. So I go out there and I do, you're going to the local, any of you girls out here like meatheads, you got a real cheap date in the ring right now. All you got to do is take them to the local buffet. Feed me more, feed me more. Then we just rattled off everything on the buffet menu and said, how you doing? How you doing? How you doing? Now we got the whole crowd spelling out soft and saying, how you doing through 2 dark segments, having never been on TV together yet. The next time we're on TV together, the crowd pops huge, and the people who are at home watching on Hulu and in the UK are like, who the fuck are these guys that the crowd's popping for they've never seen before? And then I cut a promo, and it was, whatever, and the people started saying the shit with us, and the rest is history. I went out there in front of fucking 30,000 when I debuted, and they all spelt it out with me. And Cass, I've never not known what that life was like. I've only worked one way.